right, so welcome back to Morning Express. Time now to discuss your money. And the saying goes, if you have money in the bank, your wallet and some spare change, then you're among the world's top 8 wealthy people. Now, there are many ways that our lives are richer than we realize. And today, we'd like to focus on wealth in the traditional sense, meaning money itself. And this is because it's always perceived, the perceived price, the foundation of how we measure our success, our self-worth, or even our happiness. So today, we're going to tell you why you are richer than you think, a conversation we've had since last week. And in studio with us for this conversation is the St. Anthony's General Manager, Waithaka Gatumia. Many thanks for joining us in studio, Waithaka. So we've been speaking about this since last week, why you're richer than you actually think you are. And today we're going to focus on why someone needs to pay themselves first.
Exactly.
Let's talk about that.
Thank you, first of all, for having me on. And as we did last week, it was amazing. We sat down and we discussed the issues of why you're richer than you think.
Right.
And if you remember, we were discussing it from the point of view that we spend a lot on things that we don't know, that we don't understand, and that at the end of the month, if you actually add up all the various things that we are spending on, people recognize that they're actually richer than they think. And so when you get your spending under control, you'll find your bank account with a lot more than what you thought.
Yeah.
And especially that we're talking about it in January, everyone is talking about what happened in December. Again, if your spending was on purpose, if you actually did what was required, then you're going to be able to have a lot more at the end of the month. So you are actually richer than you think. But then after that, there are other methods that we need to talk about today, which is what we're discussing this morning.
And I like that you're talking about planned spending in December, but you know, everyone acts like January comes as a surprise, and we all know after December it's January.
Exactly, exactly. There are no surprises in this world. We know what's coming in January, we know what's happening in the next month. So all we're saying is that in order to recognize how wealthy you truly are already, it's plan your spending so that at the end of that spending period, then you're able to say, wow, there's something that's been left over.
All right. So let's take a look at how much of the money we make is actually ours.
That is exactly what we're talking about today. Because in many respects, we have our priorities out of whack. And when it comes to wealth creation, you must have your priorities in order, even in terms of spending. So last week, we talked about, first of all, know where you're spending. Then now you'll be able to decide what you're going to do with that money. So this week, and this is the advice that we're giving you, pay yourself first. I hope you heard that. Pay yourself first. Why? Because everybody else does. Everybody else does. They pay themselves first, and then after that is when they worry about bills and everything else. Pay yourself first, because that's the key way to create wealth. So maybe you can have a look at what we're seeing here on the board this morning. And this is, for instance, your entire year. If you look at the year in terms of your salary, this is an illustration of what happens when you don't pay yourself first. So have a look at it. When your salary hits your account, who takes their first portion?
Rent.
Michelle. No. Your rent? No, you're mistaken. You're mistaken. Before it has even hit your account, somebody has already taken their money.
Oh, that's all right. The taxes.
Thank you. Course. KRA. And how much is that? About 30% or so. Of a year. How many months is 30%?
That's a lot.
It's a lot.
My goodness.
Let's take away 3 months. Now you can see. This is what you're starting off with. This is now where you're beginning. The money now that you are using.
Wait. What happened to January to March?
KRA took their money.
Oh, wow.
That is 30% of the year.
Okay.
Are we together?
My gosh.
Very good. Now that's your money. Now, next, you have to live somewhere, isn't it? And you are very correct. That's the first thing you're going to do, rent. Or the mortgage, isn't it? How is that going? About how much? 10, 20% maybe?
Probably, yeah.
20%?
Probably 20%.
Another 2 months. Okay. So where's your money?
Wow. June. So we have 6 months left.
Left. Have you eaten?
Not yet.
You have not eaten?
I haven't even moved out of the house.
10 months. I mean 1 month, sorry. Have you eaten? Have you dressed yourself?
I haven't dressed
You're looking
yet.
lovely this morning. I'm sure it doesn't cost, it's not cheap, isn't it?
It's really not.
It's expensive. Another month?
Oh, gosh.
Have you paid for electricity?
Not yet.
Have you paid for water? In fact, if there's any water in the tap, I hope there's some water somewhere. Have you?
Nope.
Nope. Gone. What else?
Other bills, the house girl, garbage, whatnot.
Thank you very much. Another month, 10%. What are you left with?
2 months.
Yes.
3 months.
What else is left? For those who have children?
There's none, the formula, milk formula.
Let's not even talk about school fees yet. Let's not even go there. How did we get here? You told me to drive all the way to Mombasa Road to do this. Fuel.
That's another month gone.
Thank you. Then those expenses that we're talking about, another
and then
month
there's sending
gone.
money home to shags,
Ooh,
to the parents.
holiday,
We haven't factored that in.
Entertainment, all these other things. Have we talked about going out on the weekend
So
yet?
we're out of money and the year is over.
This is the point of this illustration.
And we're left with December, which is the highest
So what happens?
spending month.
What happens now? We end up spending the money for next year. And this is what we're talking about today. If you continue with this same system, you'll find yourself with nothing at the end of it all. Therefore, we must change it around and begin to pay yourself first.
But, you know, it's interesting. Where does one draw the line between paying themselves and paying the bills? Because, you know, you're thinking, I'm getting money to pay the bills, so that's paying yourself.
Yes, but it's all about choices. We must make the choice because we realize that still with this same scenario, we still end up going out, isn't it?
Right.
We still end up spending money on takeout food, which was one of my biggest mistakes in life. We still spend on mobile phone, isn't it? If you take out, everybody in Kenya has a mobile phone and they're spending money on their mobile phone and money that they don't need to. I'm not saying that you don't need to communicate. What I'm saying is that you don't need to spend every single cent on the phone every day. So it's about controlling and deciding what really matters to you. So if you pay yourself first, then you'll end up not paying everybody else first. And then you have something at the end in order to show for your investments and for your savings. This is not sustainable. As you can see, some of us are already using 2018 money.
Right.
That's what you're doing.
As it is.
If you were to now begin to look at it, we're in 2018 in terms of the money that we're spending.
Right.
Yes.
And so that's what we'll be talking about next. If we could just take a sit.
Sure,
we're talking
no
of
problem.
January to December. And like you said, all those months disappeared when you were paying bills.
Yes.
So where in that small salary of yours do you have time to pay yourself from?
This is the realization. Last week when we talked about it, I was very, very focused on saying we must know where our money is going. Because you are wealthier than you think, because you're richer than you think already, if you decide with that extra money that you've been spending on things that you didn't know, that extra border ride that you didn't plan for, that extra phone call that you made, I mean, we're shocked. If you print out your mobile money statement, how many people would be shocked how much money we are actually giving to the mobile companies? If we only managed it a little bit better, we would have a lot more in our account.
Right.
When you realize now that you have a little bit extra money, the first thing that we must begin to do is to save and to invest. That is the way that you pay yourself first.
And I like that you say extra money, because with money, it's never enough. You'll never have enough money.
Yes. And the thing about it is it's about priorities. Because the danger is that we think, oh, if I do this, I'll not be able to do the things that I enjoy. If I do this, I'll not. No. In fact, the biggest issue is that we don't usually have enough to really enjoy ourselves. If we plan our money well, if we're not spending on things that don't matter, if we're doing the right things as far as our planning is concerned, then you enjoy yourself in December even more than anyone else. Why? Because you have enough funds to be able to cater for that period of time.
Right.
Yes.
But what about the fact that there's responsibilities, right? And in life, even when you get more money, you end up spending more and requiring more.
Exactly. And that is the trick. Let me say this at the very beginning of this discussion. This is what tends to happen. So I get a pay raise, or I change my job, isn't it? And there's a little bit of extra money in the pocket. What happens to the apartment that you're living in? Suddenly it feels a little bit small.
Right.
Isn't it?
You have to move to a bigger
Have you not
one.
been living in that apartment for the whole time? Have you not survived in that one place? This is what happens with people who create wealth and those who are just simply in the rat race. Those who create wealth, they save and invest more as they earn more.
Right.
Those who are in the rat race, in the consumer culture, spend more as they earn more. So you're not really creating a difference. So your lifestyle is at 100,000 and you spend all that 100,000. You get a pay rise to 150, your lifestyle jumps up to 150. I mean, that is unsustainable.
So you're using everything you get.
If you were to continue at that lifestyle of 100,000, which you are surviving at anyway, you have an extra 50,000 shillings now to begin to invest and plan for your future. What are you doing, honestly, with that extra money? What are you really trying to do? Because what happens is that as I know this is a human thing, and I'm part of it because I understand it completely because I'm one of you. I'm a human being just like you are. I enjoy other people looking at me. I enjoy other people thinking I'm doing well for myself. Isn't it? It's for their sake. But you know what I realized? I realized that what other people think, it crosses their mind once like this, and who's left with the burden of the debt of taking care of? It's me. And the other thing is I realized people don't care. People really don't care.
Because, I mean, personally, how much thought do you put into somebody else out there who's not looking standard?
So he drove in a nice car. Well done. Good car. Then your life continues.
That's it, right.
But for that guy, that nice car that he's driving now, if he took it out on a loan, he has now another 5-10 years to pay off that car. And if he didn't have a plan for it, then it's going to be extremely difficult to maintain. So this is what we're talking about in wealth creation. We are not saying do not enjoy yourself, but enjoy yourself with a plan. And that's what we're talking about. How much of what you work so hard for is actually yours? That's a question you must ask yourself. It's only yours if you save and you invest.
Right. And talking of saving and investing, the little that you get, these are habits of, wealth creators, wealthy people. But there's also the fact that they make their money earn for them as they earn elsewhere. So how can one, with their small savings, have that work for them?
There are so many avenues for this. And in fact, this is why I'm not saying that I'm against, for instance, the mobile companies. I think, if anything, the Airtels, the Safaricom's, all these different companies have given us new avenues in which we can begin to invest. Beforehand, it was so difficult to go and find a stockbroker. It was so difficult to go find a bank. Now you do all these wonderful services on your phone. Now, instead of picking up your phone and saying, hello, uko happy, unafanya nini? Spending money, why don't you use that same phone to send that money into a bank account to save? Do you get what I mean? That you're changing the use of the things that are around you to create. The second myth that I will try and debunk right now, as you just said, is that many people think that I need 100,000 shillings to invest. That is a lie.
Because, when you have 100 shillings in the pocket, it's hard to think I'm going to invest these 100 shillings somewhere.
Oh my. We give this example in our class at Centonomy where we show you that 150 shillings, if invested for 10 years at 10%, 150 shillings per day, invested for 10 years at 10% is 1 million shillings. People have been wondering, where am I going to get this 1 million shillings? And 10% is, you will get 10% in most investment options that are around here, whether it is in the stock market, whether it's through unit trusts, whether it is even through the bonds and government treasury bills. Those are, in fact, easy amounts to be able to get. Invested for 10 years at 10%. But do you see what I said? 10 years.
Yes.
Wealth creation is not chap like this. There's no such thing as pesa pap in wealth creation.
And that's what guys want today, because no one wants to wait 10 years to make 1 million shillings. And so, there's that... The taking shortcuts, but I mean, are there any ways? I know you say it's not, but are there any ways of high-risk investments, for example, with the little money?
There are, but as you said, high risk means that you could either make something or you could lose it.
Right.
And we're not talking about high risk that way. What we want you to do is to be able to assess the investment option that you're going for. Those who are true wealth creators in this world assess the investment that they are going in. They understand it. They understand it to the point that the decision made even on a high-risk investment is based on knowledge and not on speculation. We as Kenyans, we have a terrible culture of speculation. Whether it is in the stock market, an IPO comes along, isn't it? And the whole of Kenya invests, isn't it? In fact, we oversubscribe for these IPOs because we're told you will buy today and tomorrow you'll get your money.
Or when a new network marketing craze comes and every Kenyan flocks to the same one as well.
And it's the same reason that we are serial plot buyers. There are so many people with plots everywhere and they don't know what they're going to do with those plots simply because the whole country was going there, let's go. Not understanding the fundamentals of investment. So if you get the fundamentals of investment, is it a good investment? Does it show promise for the future? Are there tests that have gone into place? Then you're going to make, even for high-risk investments, then you're going to make the right choices in order to get in there. But now, as we're talking about today, those are discussions for people who are dealing with hundreds of millions. Me, I want to talk to the person who's dealing with 100 bob
and it's
today.
almost end month January.
Exactly. So, 100 shillings, 100 shillings, 150 shillings, sorry, if we put it that way,
Right.
is equal to a wonderful holiday at the end of the year if you only save it now. But the problem is we start thinking about December holidays when? In November. In fact, basically, we start thinking about in the beginning of December, isn't it? When now you're waiting for that extra salary to hit the account. So what we're talking about is that we must be systematic, we must be orderly, and we must take the time to learn how to invest. If we do so, then you can truly create wealth that will sustain you through your lifetime. Please, 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 pay yourself first.
Right. And when you're talking about paying yourself, we're talking about the small ways, like saving that 100 shillings you wanted to buy credit on because you already have credit, or, you know, buying unga instead of buying chips because unga will give you more in a day. But what other ways can people save their little salary?
Oh, wow. I mean, as we began discussing last week, the thing about being richer than you think is true. We are, because we spend poorly. What is it that causes us to go to one place or another? We discussed it about, especially the issue at the beginning of the year, we're buying school clothes, school books, and other things. There are schools where this issue of school books, what they have done is that they have a share opportunity where if your son or daughter is going to Standard 4, what you do is you give the books to a Standard 3 student. Do you get what I mean?
Right.
And it is handed over, and the amount of the books, as far as textbooks are concerned, are shared by the parents. Can you imagine how much that school is saving in terms of textbooks? Because it's the same book that you require. What about a school, the way you go to buy the school clothes? Some people want to go to the high-end shops. You're buying the exact same clothes at an extra 50 shillings because the shop is in a shopping mall rather than the one on the street. When you make these choices, be alert to the fact that over a year, if you continue to make those same choices, you'll find yourself in a hole which you can't get out of. So please, 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 again, pay yourself first by saving and investing, and those two are different things. To save and to invest are two different things altogether. Saving, you're keeping some money aside in order to take care of your lifestyle as it is right now. Investing, you're putting money aside that you're hoping will begin to grow. And that is what, you remember you're talking about wealthy people, their money is growing for them somewhere. And how is it growing? It's not growing at 100% every year. No, they put it into investments that they understand that probably will come back with 15, 20% in a year. But you can imagine 15, 20% of $1 billion shillings is significant. You get what I mean? But it's the same. It is significant. 15 or 20% of 100,000 shillings is significant.
And over 100 shillings as well.
It is.
All right. And you know, when you're talking about saving and investing, many would say they don't have the money, even that to save, because there's this recurring mindset of lacking. You know, you just constantly think you lack.
Michelle, you're correct. And why do we think that we lack? Because we're always trying to live beyond our means. I understand, I get the fact that people want to live a good lifestyle. But the thing is, what are you doing by living that good lifestyle now? You're ending up with a retirement package where you're not going to be able to cater for yourself. We tell this story in our class where we have civil servants who are receiving now a pension of 5,000 shillings. What can you do in Kenya for a month with 5,000 shillings? It is a difficult, difficult lifestyle.
Right.
So we must be purposeful about planning for our retirement, planning for the things that truly matter, our children's education, for the house that you want to live in and the lifestyle that you want to live. You don't fall into these things. You must be purposeful about getting into them.
Right.
And that is why you must pay yourself first.
And speaking of being purposeful, many people have goals that they're working towards. And even as you plan for these goals, I understand it's also important to know how much your goal will cost.
Exactly.
Right. Talk to us about that.
You see, one of the things that we do in our classes is that we teach the concept of future value. I know people don't like a lot of mathematics, so we simplify it as much. We give you a table where you're able to just plug in the numbers that you have. I want a house of this amount, and I want it in 5 years' time. You're able to do that calculation in the class and be able to figure out the house I want to live in 5 years' time will cost this amount. So then now from that amount, you're able to work backwards. Maybe I can give my personal experience. For instance, I'm planning for my children. My daughter is 2 years old, and we have another one on the way. And if she's 2 years, she has 16 years to go to university. University is an important thing for us as parents. So we have looked at it, and we have seen that if university today in the private universities in Kenya cost about 2 million shillings for a 4-year degree, we have worked it out that in 16 years it will have almost doubled. It will be about 4.6 million shillings. So we have worked backwards 4.6 million shillings. We have worked what do we need to be doing now in terms of investing for then? And so in paying ourselves, we are putting aside about 400 shillings a day in order to be able to accomplish that goal. So you see, that's how you work. I mean, that's a brilliant question that you've asked. That's exactly it. If you know what your goal is, you work backwards and figure out what are the step-by-step methods that we're going to get to that goal. And it will be shocking to you how possible it is. Because before that, we were spending 400 shillings so easily. You know what I mean? You go out and have lunch. But now when I look at 400 shillings, I'm seeing USIU, I'm seeing Daystar, I'm seeing, the Catholic University, all the options that my daughter now will have, God willing, when she's 18 years old.
Right, that's really cool. But also, I understand sometimes someone, the way people see themselves and the potential one views themselves as also affects the way they save, the way they invest, or even if they do it at all. Because many think you need to be a genius or a superstar to have $1 million net worth. Talk to us about reassessing your potential as an individual.
In fact, that's why I love talking about Kenyans, because we have brilliant examples of Kenyans who have become successful even without an education. I mean, one of the wealthiest people that we know in this country, somebody that I'm not afraid to mention, Jenga Karume, did not have any real formal education, but he understood the principles of wealth creation. And if you get the principles of wealth creation, which are the discipline of saving, the discipline of investing, and then finally, and I think this is where true wealth creation happens, that spirit of entrepreneurship. The spirit of entrepreneurship, which means that you're looking at opportunities around you and you're finding solutions. So that if people require some firewood in an area, you provide it. And after they are satisfied with firewood, now you get them the next best fuel, which is charcoal, isn't it? Do you see what I mean? That you're looking for opportunities, and rather than just leaving them as problems, you are solving those problems for people. That is where true wealth creation comes from, that spirit of entrepreneurship. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a business owner. What you have to be is to have the mindset of somebody who is solving problems rather than just pointing them out. If there's a problem there, solve it. And if you solve it, money will find you. Yes.
And also something important you mentioned earlier is to stop comparing yourself to people who are doing or investing more than you are. But it's a big problem for humans, Waithaka. We want to be accepted, we want to be part of the trend and part of the crowd. And so if you, for example, go and invest 50,000 shillings, I'll think, let me just stay and wait until I have 50,000 shillings, and then just like Waithaka, I can go and take it there.
But that's the thing about true investors and people who understand wealth creation. You don't know what that person has had to go through to get that 50,000 shillings. They have their own story, they have their own life. You worry about you. In fact, the consumer culture that we have is based on what does somebody else think about me. Isn't it? I want to look good so that they think something about me. But you know what? As I said, they look at you, say, wow, good job, and the next minute they are off to their own business. You worry about yourself. You don't know, that 50,000 shillings, did I borrow it? Am I paying a debt somewhere for it? So it looks beautiful that I've paid that 50,000 shillings, but you don't know my story, and I don't know yours. Stick to your own life. You create wealth for yourself, and that is the path to take, because we are not the same, and each one of us has our own story to tell.
And of course, there's always someone who has more. There's always someone who has more.
Let me give you some advice. Those who are in chamas, because this is a huge issue in Kenya. Investment groups, your chamas. Isn't the tendency that in a chama you'll say everybody has to pay 5,000 shillings? And if you don't pay 5,000 shillings, you can't be able to be in this chama. Why?
Because they have targets and they have goals.
What if somebody has 50,000 shillings
Then you go to a chama that, that makes sense.
What opportunities will that person who has brought the 50,000 shillings open your chama to? Isn't it? That somebody who with just 5,000 shillings will do. Do you get what I mean? All we need to do is make sure that you keep good records so that you know what everybody has given and they get the proportion that they require. Imagine if you're in a chama with somebody who has 1 million shillings or 10 million shillings. What kind of investment opportunities will be open to that chama now that were not open to the chama of 5,000 bob, 2,000 bob every day?
Right.
So why are we are so committed to this fact that our chamas must be exactly the same? Why? We are not the same.
Right.
And it's the same thing that we talk about. In fact, chamas are just good examples of what the stock market is. Not everybody who has invested in the companies in the stock market has put in the same amount of money. But you all receive the same benefit of the pooled capital. So that's why we're saying everybody is different. Don't force everybody to give the same amount. So long as you have records of how much somebody has given, you give the proportion back because it'll help you to get investments that you never thought about before.
And that's the investment part of it. But when we talk about saving, especially just for a very common Mwananchi, at what point, because if you have, say, one bank account where your salary comes in, and it's the same bank account you're using to pay bills, but the same one you're using to also store your savings. Now, it gets very tricky.
It does. It does. Now, obviously, for the sake of planning, for the sake of control, it may be better to have a second bank account. And the good thing, and I applaud the banking industry in Kenya because savings accounts tend to have a lot fewer charges allotted to them.
Right.
And the good thing about a savings account is that it's harder to get money out. You generally don't get an ATM card with your savings account. You generally don't get a checkbook. So getting the money, it means you have to actually wake up, go to the bank and do something about it. It would be shocking to you that the cost of running a savings account is minimal and you're actually getting some benefits. So open a second account. But if you are unable to, simply just record what you're doing. If you keep good records, you're able to plan very well. And that's wonderful. That's a good question that you have asked.
And I have a viewer here who's asking, when you're paying yourself, do you pay yourself first or subtract your monthly expenses and then pay yourself from the rest?
You see, this is the thing. Monthly expenses will always be there and you can spend as much as you want on your monthly expenses. What we're trying to do is create the culture of saving and investing. And we're not saying do a lot of it. We're
not saying take it immediately after the salary, just a culture of everyday saving.
What we are saying is if you do not plan for it at the very beginning, by the end of the year, as you saw in the illustration, there's nothing left. So for the viewer, thank you for that question. Please make sure that you understand where your money is going first. When you understand where your money is going, then you'll be able to see, hey, truly, I'm spending on things that don't matter.
Right.
Let me now begin to spend on the things that matter.
Right.
Yes.
And how do you decide on how much to pay yourself?
As much, if for instance, you had the opportunity, Michelle, to go to your boss here and ask for any amount that you would want to be paid.
That's not even, and I hope he's watching.
Yes, I am sure he's watching. If you had the opportunity to go there and ask, what would you ask for? The best you could get, isn't it? What is the best you can pay yourself? You understand that you have rent to pay, food to eat, school fees to pay, all these other things. What is the best amount of all this money that you can do, that you can give yourself at that time in terms of saving and investment? I am very shy of putting, a 10% amount, 20%. I'm very shy of saying that. Why? Because somebody can be, especially when you're a student just out of campus, and you're living in your parents' home and you get your first salary, you can in fact pay yourself 100%, isn't it?
Right.
You can. So if I was to tell you pay yourself 10%, I would be doing that person a disservice.
Yeah. All right. So pay yourself as much as you can.
Because isn't that the plan? If you had a choice, that's what
you can't underpay yourself.
No.
All right, let's take one more viewer's question. Just call me Ken. Interesting name. Saying, following your money, what does use bigger bills to think big mean exactly?
Wow, use bigger bills to think big. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I've never heard of it.
But it sounds very interesting. I'd really like to know what Ken is talking about. Maybe, I like using cash a lot more because there's a pain of removing 1,000 shilling note and breaking it. You like to see, maybe that's what he's talking about. You like to see a note for 1,000 shillings, to pay somewhere. And if you see it, sometimes maybe you might not be willing to give the 1,000 bob for a 50 shilling account. So maybe that's what he's talking about, but I've never heard that before.
Right. And Brian Ora here saying, following the conversation, if you pay yourself, you'll be motivated to do more. And that's another thing.
Wow.
Right?
This is one of the things that we talk about. Reward is so important. So that we're not talking about that all your savings and investments are for 10 years. No. Plan for December 2017. Plan for December 2017. Where are you going to go on holiday? Where are you going to give your money to your relatives and all these things? These are wonderful opportunities.
All right. All right. Thank you so much for speaking to us, Waithaka Gatumia of Santonomy, telling you to start planning your December holiday now, 12 months before the deadline. And also, we're talking about your money and how you are richer than you think you are. So the conversation today is pay yourself first. Always pay yourself first. And that's your money here on Morning Express. And that brings us to a close here on the show. We thank you for watching. My name is Michelle Ngele. Coming up next is Worldview.